Particular care should be taken that when the officers make contracts on behalf of the government, or sign agreements, these contracts and agreements are not defective, or harmful to the state. If they are negotiating any treaties and alliances, they do not overlook, or forsake the interests of the state, or if they find the state in a weak and embarrassing position on account of unfavorable terms of treaties, or due to intrigues, they should be able to find sensible ways out of them. See that they know and realize their proper place and rank, because he who does not realize his place and position will never understand those of others. One more thing about these officers: you must remember not to select them for very important posts, and not to trust them completely, simply because you have found them honest, diligent, trustworthy and intelligent, and have formed a good opinion about them. Because there are some people who, when it suits them, pretend honesty, diligence and fidelity, and can put on the garb of piety and virtue, and thus find their ways in the hearts of the rulers, though actually they are neither honest, nor diligent, nor wise, nor sagacious. Therefore, you must always look to the record or reputation of the services of such men during previous regimes. More importance should be attached to their good reputation. This kind of selection and supervision will prove that you are faithful to God, and that you wish your Imam well. Thus you must appoint one officer as the head of each important branch of your government. He should have knowledge and wisdom enough to cope successfully with all the intricate problems of his department, and should be diligent enough to cope with extensive work. Remember well that if there is any defect in your officers, and you are tolerating it, then you and only you are responsible for all those evils. I want to advise you about your businessmen and industrialists. Treat them well, and order your officers to follow the same policy. There may be local businessmen carrying on their trade in certain places, or those who send their merchandise from one place to another. There may even be those who import and export goods. Similarly, there may be industrialists and manufacturers, as well as industrial labor or men engaged in the handicrafts. They all deserve sympathy, protection and good treatment. They all are the sources of wealth to the country. They provide goods for the consumers. Most of these traders carry and convey these goods from across deserts, seas and over open lands and mountains. Their consignments are brought from distant lands, often from places which are not easy to approach, and where usually people do not care or do not dare to go. These businessmen are usually peace-loving people, not given to mischievous disturbances and seditious fermentation. You must look after their interest and protect them, whether they are trading in your cities or towns, or whether they are traveling over the countries carrying goods from place to place. One more thing about these traders and industrialists: while treating them most sympathetically, you must keep an eye over their activities as well. You know they are usually stingy misers, intensely self-centered and selfish, suffering from the obsession of grasping and accumulating wealth. They often hoard their goods to get more profit out of them by creating scarcity and by indulging in black marketing. Such a condition is extremely injurious to the public on one hand, and disgraceful to the ruler on the other. You must put a stop to all such practices, because the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his progeny, has explicitly prohibited such practices. Remember that trade should go on between the buyers and sellers, according to correct measures and weights, and on such reasonable terms that neither the consumers nor the suppliers should have to face losses. But even with all the sympathetic treatments accorded to them, and with all the facilities provided to them, if the traders and industrialists carry on hoarding and black marketing, then you must punish them according to the intensity of their crime. Then I want to caution you about the poor. Fear God about their conditions, and your attitude towards them. They have no support, no resources and no opportunities. They are poor, they are destitute, and many of them are cripples and unfit for work. Some of them come out begging, and some who maintain self-respect do not beg, but their conditions speak of their distress, poverty, destitution and wants. For the sake of God, Malik, protect them and their rights. He has laid the responsibility of this upon your shoulders. You must fix a share for them from Beit al-Mal, the government treasury. Besides this reservation in cash, you must also reserve a share in kind of crops, etc., from government granaries in cities, where food grains are stored as are cultivated on state-owned land, because in these storage the share of those living far away from any particular city is equal to the share of those living nearby. Let me remind you once again that you are made responsible for guarding the rights of the poor people and for looking after their welfare. Take care that the conceit of your position and vanity of wealth may not deceive you to lose sight of such a grave and important responsibility. Yours is such an important post that you cannot claim immunity from the responsibility of even minor errors of commission or omission, with an excuse that you were engrossed in the major problems of the state, which you have solved diligently. Therefore, be very careful of the welfare of the poor people. Do not be arrogant and vain against them. Remember that you have to take particular care of those who cannot reach you, whose poverty-stricken and disease-ridden sight may be hateful to you, and whom society treats with disgust, detestation, and contempt. You should be a source of comfort, love and respect to them. Appoint a respectable, honest and pious person, a person who fears God, and who can treat them honorably. Order him to find out everything about them, and to submit a report to you. Then treat these poor people in such a way that on the day of judgment you can plead your case successfully before God. Because of all classes of your subjects, this class deserves more of your attention, sympathy and fair deal. Though every one of these poor persons deserves your sympathy, and you will have to do justice to his cause to achieve his favor, yet you should pay more attention to young orphans and old cripples. They neither have any support, nor can they conveniently come out begging. They cannot reach you, therefore you must reach them. Remember that the fulfillment of this obligation and duty is considered as a tiresome burden by most of the rulers, but to those who desire to achieve his blessings and to enter into his realm, even this work seems light and congenial. They bear it happily, dutifully and sincerely. They find pleasures in it, and they believe in the promise made by God. Out of your hours of work, fix a time for the complainants and for those who want to approach you with their grievances. During this time, you should do no other work, but hear them and pay attention to their complaints and grievances. For this purpose you must arrange public audience for them. During this audience, for the sake of God, treat them with kindness, courtesy and respect. Do not let your army and police be in the audience hall at such times, so that those who have grievances against your regime may speak to you freely, unreservedly and without fear. All this is a necessary factor of your rule, because I have often heard the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his progeny, saying, that nation or regime where that rights of the depressed, destitute and suppressed are not guarded, and where the mighty and powerful persons are not forced to exceed these rights, cannot achieve salvation. You must remember that in those audiences the most common men will gather. Therefore, if you find them misbehaving, becoming unmannerly, or if you feel that their talk is irrelevant, tolerate them. Do not be rude and do not insult them, so that God may be kind and merciful to you, and may reward you for obeying his commands explicitly. Treat them courteously, hear their grievances patiently, and if you are forced to reject their demands, then reject them in such a way that your rejection may please them as much as your grants. Then there are certain duties